Understanding the Rhetorical Situation, Ethos. This PowerPoint was designed by Robin Kish for the English department at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. By the end of this presentation, you will be able to understand ethos and its place in the rhetorical situation, identify where and when writers use ethos, and finally, you should feel comfortable establishing ethos in your own writing. Ethos is part of the Rhetorical Triangle, along with Pathos and Logos. Together, these three appeals, ethos, pathos, and logos, are the rhetorical appeals that good writers use in order to convince their audience of some larger purpose. Pathos refers to emotional appeals, how well the writer can connect to the audience. Logos refers to logic. What is the writer's claim or main purpose, and how does he or she support that claim or purpose through evidence? Ethos refers to the credibility or character of the writer. By appealing to ethos, good writers prove that they are reliable, accurate, and fair. Their knowledge of the topic is unquestionable. According to April Ladinsky and Stuart Green, authors of From Inquiry to Academic Writing, good writers can establish their credibility in three of the following ways. They can 1. Show that they are capable of making good judgment. They can 2. Show that they are knowledgeable of a topic. And finally 3. They can show that they understand the complexities of the issue. Good judgment refers to a writer's ability to respond intellectually to an issue, to make a claim and support it logically with evidence. Good writers first determine if an issue is worth talking about, that is, if the issue is relevant to an audience, and if it is thus worth discussing. Good writers must draw conclusions from evidence that are sound, that is, logical, and they must present information accurately and without resorting to manipulation. Readers must trust writers to present information fairly and accurately. Readers do not want to feel as if they've been tricked. Writers who do not pass this fair test, who resort to manipulating readers or keeping certain facts from them in order to make their own arguments look stronger, well, these writers might lose the reader's trust. Good writers are also knowledgeable. Academic discourse is a type of conversation. That is, scholars share many different points of view regarding a particular issue or topic, and they discuss these views with each other. Knowledgeable writers know what other scholars are saying and how to present multiple points of view. In keeping with the idea of fairness, good writers represent all sides of a conversation before drawing their own conclusions. In other words, good writers do their research. Before writing, they listen, they read, they take in information. And then, after they have taken in this information, they formulate it into the context of their own argument. Likewise, good and knowledgeable writers also know that issues worth talking about are never simple. Good writers might have to suggest compromises between multiple points of view. They must also find their own claim. They must stake their own claim and anticipate reasonable concessions or points of disagreement with this claim. They must do so in a way that encourages debate rather than confrontation. Complex discourse should be, above all things, respectful. Good writers present themselves as fair, knowledgeable, and understanding. In doing this, they can earn the reader's trust. Even if the reader doesn't entirely agree with the writer, doesn't matter. Ultimately, if the reader can trust a writer, he or she can at least say, this writer has a good point. In this exercise, read through the following excerpt from scientist Oliver Sacks's essay, Anybody Out There?, which first appeared in Natural History magazine back in 2002, and then answer the questions on the following slide. As you can probably guess from the tone of the excerpt and from the topic presented here, the topic of the essay, Anybody Out There?, was the possibility that life may exist on other planets. As part of the rhetorical triangle, ethos works in conjunction with the other two appeals, pathos and logos. To be credible, good writers understand who is in their audience and how to appeal to these readers. Tone, language, and word choice are critical. A more general audience will require more general information. For example, if you were to write a review of the production of Macbeth for a non-academic audience, you would probably want to include an overview of the play. But if you were to write a critical analysis of Macbeth for your English professor, you wouldn't need to include a summary, since you can already assume your professor is knowledgeable of Macbeth's plot. Likewise, your English professor probably wouldn't be happy if you riddled your paper with profanities. Good writers are mindful of their tone, understanding when they can be more lighthearted and humorous, and when it is appropriate to be more professional or serious. Ethos also works in conjunction with logos. In order to demonstrate that they are knowledgeable, fair, and understanding, good writers must establish a clear line of reasoning, a clear purpose or thesis that is supported with evidence. Good writers must also acknowledge reasonable points of difference or counter-arguments. This isn't just because good writers are fair, understanding, knowledgeable, although as we've discussed, they are certainly all of these. But acknowledging counter-arguments also allows good writers a chance to examine the limitation of opposing viewpoints. Always, though, in a way that is respectful. Identifying these limitations and counter-arguments gives good writers a chance to further establish and thus strengthen their own line of reasoning. In order to determine credibility, take a look at the following, an excerpt from My Culture at a Crossroads by Kevin Powell, and then answer the questions on the following slide. A paper is a representation of its author. The information provided speaks volumes for the trustworthiness of the writer, and is thus an extension of his or her own character. Even though a writer is not explicitly stated as a character in an essay, he or she's presence is indeed felt. It's implicit, it's implied. Therefore, as a writer, it is critical that you present yourself in the best way possible. Writers aren't the only ones who must appeal to ethos. Anyone attempting to convince an audience of a particular message must also be aware of how he or she comes across. Makers of visual texts must also be aware of their credibility in the production and distribution of their images. This includes makers of advertisements, of flyers, of films, television shows, anyone who wants to get a message out there. Individuals, too, must be mindful of how they present themselves visually. Think about going on a job interview. If you were applying for a job in corporate America, you wouldn't show up to an interview in cut-off jeans and a tank top. You'd take time to dress yourself in a nice suit, good shoes, the whole works. You might even bring props, such as a briefcase. These visual cues speak to your character, at least on a very superficial level. If you show up to an interview in shorts and a tank top, that doesn't mean you aren't qualified for the position. Perhaps your resume speaks volumes for your qualifications. Unfortunately, a potential employer might not even bother with your resume if you show up looking ready for a picnic rather than for an interview. Like it or not, your appearance does speak volumes for you. In the following exercise, take a look at this picture, which originally appeared on the cover of Newsweek, November 2009, and is a former vice presidential candidate, Sarah Palin. The photograph was originally from a photo shoot with Runner's World magazine, which Palin also appeared in November of 2009. Take a look at the photograph and then answer the questions on the following slide.